than 200 feet below the ground in a coal mine in Pennsylvania. A nearby older shaft filled with tons of water, and it forced the miners to a dead-end shaft, and they just had an 18 by 70 foot air pocket, and it was only illuminated by their headlamps. They rapped on the rock ceiling 9 times every 10 minutes, hoping that somebody with some kind of specialized listening equipment would hear them. The leader of the group gave it to them straight. He said, "In about an hour, we'll all be dead." And then there was quiet, and there were tears, a lot of silent prayers. And then one of the miners asked for a pen, and he wrote a note on a cardboard piece of paper to his wife and kids, telling them that he loved them. He put the note in a white plastic bucket and offered the pen to others, and they put their notes in that white plastic bucket. Each man wrote his goodbyes to his loved ones. When the 9 notes had been placed in the bucket, and the lid was snapped on, and the bucket was slashed to a boulder so that it would be found. A third miner took a steel cable and he looped it through their belts. And he said that they would all die together, and that way they would all be found together. They were trapped in a dark world, unable to free themselves from their tomb. They knew that in minutes they would be dead. They had said their goodbyes, and they had roped themselves together. They said they would die with dignity. And then they heard a voice. A voice said, "Can you hear me?" And they almost couldn't believe it. For a moment, they thought they were having an illusion. And then they heard the voice again, and the voice says, "Can you hear me?" And they screamed back, and they said, "Yes, we can hear you." And thus began the rescue of these miners from that terrible, terrible tomb. It was when they had heard the voice, somewhere up there, they heard a voice and they responded and were saved. The reason why we are worshiping here today is because there is someone up there. If no one were up there, it would be ludicrous for us to be here today. But the reason why Sundays are important is because somebody is up there ready to rescue us. Sundays were designed by God for an encounter with Him. On Sunday mornings when we gather here, we encounter the eternal. When we gather here on Sunday mornings, we encounter the one who is up there. We gather together on Sundays. You came here today, and I came here today because somebody was up there listening to us. When you walked through the doors this morning, you walked into a place where eternal things happen. On Sunday mornings, Sunday evenings when we worship Sunday evening, on Sunday mornings when you come here, you rub shoulders with that which is eternal. When you walked through the doors this morning, you walked into a place where eternal things happen. Eternal decisions are made at the altar. If you were saved on a Sunday morning or a Sunday evening and you came to the altar, an eternal decision was made on that day. Eternal destinies are formed by those decisions. You make those decisions and eternal destinies are formed. The eternal dimensions of our lives are emphasized, and the eternal matters become a matter of focus. Now, I'm not saying that these things can not happen elsewhere, and I'm not saying that they don't happen at other times, but our lives are set in such a pattern that usually this is the day when we take our minds and we focus on that which is eternal. I love Sundays. We love Sundays. Because that's the primary time of the week, primarily, that we turn and focus our mind on that which will last forever. We're here because there is somebody up there. Our text today is from Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, the 11th verse. And Solomon writes in Ecclesiastes 3:11, he says in this part of the verse, he says that God has set eternity in the heart of man. In your heart today and in my heart, God has set eternity. God has set the concept of forever in our hearts. He has set in our minds today eternal desires. He has set eternity in the heart of man. It is God Himself in His wisdom who has put into man's heart the desire for that which is eternal. You are here today because you want to live forever. You are here today on Sunday, and you gather on Sunday because you realize that Sundays, that eternity is important in your life. God has put into man's mind a notion of the eternal. He has put into our mind a notion of the beyond, a notion of the forever, the notion of an infinity of duration. We can comprehend an infinity of duration. In our small minds, in a way, we can comprehend eternity and forever. It is what is out there that makes us human, that we realize there is something greater than what we have today. I was in Dover Friday, and usually when I'm in Dover, I try to visit the graves of my parents. I stood by their graves, and I put a fall wreath on Mom and Dad's grave Friday. And it's a sad time, as you know, to stand beside the graves of your parents and to stand by their grave. It's a sad time. But on the other hand, there is joy in knowing that that is not the end. But there is something beyond there. My mom and dad laying there, I know that there is a forever for them. There is an eternity for them out there. That's why we come together on Sundays to worship. Mom and Dad have on their tombstone this psalm from Psalm 17:15, a section of Psalm 17:15, and it says, I will be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. That is a hope and an idea that there is a beyond, that there is a notion of the infinity of duration, that this life is not the end. We are created for the unseen and the eternal. We are created for eternity. Nothing that is earthly can eventually satisfy our souls. We can live in the best houses. We can drive the best cars. We can have the best food. We can have all of the food that we want, and that's okay. But in the end, we will find out that all of that is not fulfilling. Solomon said that it is all vanities. It is because there is always a hole in our heart. A hole in our heart that can only be filled with that which is eternal. God has given us the ability to comprehend the eternal and in a way to comprehend infinity. And since we have that knowledge, we cannot be satisfied with that which is temporary and that which is finite. Look at the pyramids. Why were the pyramids built? The pyramids were built because the pharaohs had in their heart a concept of something that is beyond out there. The pyramids are a monument to mankind. A monument for mankind to realize that there is something out there beyond what we have. There is an eternal and there is an eternity. There was an emperor by the name of Qin Shi from China. And when he died in 200 BC, about 210 BC, he had these terracotta statues built. And you've probably seen these on National Geographic shows and in magazines and stuff. But he had 8,000 statues of soldiers, 130 chariots, 520 horses, and all of these were made out of clay, terracotta, 150 cavalry horses, and all kinds of servants. All of these things were found in this pit around the grave of Emperor Qin Shi. Why did he do that? Why did he command for all of that to be done? He commanded all of that to be done because he knew and he felt in his life that when he died, there was something beyond him, and he wanted his soldiers and his horses and his servants with him. God has put eternity in the heart of man. We are limited to time. All of us in here are limited to time. You probably looked at your watch today and said, oh no, he's getting in the pulpit at 11:30. We're going to be here forever. But we all look at time. We are all limited to time, but we are related to eternity. Let me say that again. We are limited to time, but we are related to eternity. That's my biggest question about, and my biggest doubt about evolution. That's my biggest doubt, and I cannot endorse the scientific theory that is now, a theory, not a fact, of evolution. I cannot endorse the fact that we came from lower forms of life. Because if we came from lower forms of life, where did we ever get the concept of the beyond? Where did we ever get the concept of eternity? Where did we ever get the concept of the desire for that which is unseen? Monkeys and apes and chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans, they do not have the concept of the beyond. You'll never see an orangutan teaching Sunday school. If they are our cousins, why is eternity not in their hearts? God did not place eternity in the hearts of beasts, but He put eternity in the heart of man. We desire that which is out there. And that's why we come together on Sunday mornings, to confirm our desire that there is somebody up there listening to us, and He hears us. C.S. Lewis, that great theologian and Christian apologist, he wrote these words: if I find in myself a desire that this world cannot fulfill, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. If I find in myself a desire that this world cannot fulfill, the most probable explanation is that I am made for another world. That's why we gather on Sunday morning, because we are made for something greater. Eternity. We come here and look into eternity because we are eternal beings. Not only do we have these desires, but we have these eternal destinies in our mind. Jesus says, let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. And if I go away, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. That is eternity. If there was not this concept of the beyond in our heart, those words of Jesus would be absolutely stupid. They would be stupid, Christ, why did you say such stupid words if there is not this concept of the mansions beyond? Paul writes in Colossians, he says, whatever you do, do you work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive a reward of inheritance. Inheritance is eternal. Inheritance is out there. Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:8, he says, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. In the future, there is a crown laid up for me, a crown of righteousness, which the Lord the righteous judge will give to me. If there were not something out there, Paul would be absolutely delusional, the most delusional man on the face of the planet that ever lived. But he's not delusional because there is something out there, our eternal destiny. Peter writes, to obtain an inheritance which is imperishable and undefiled and that will not fade away, reserved in heaven for you. That inheritance is out there. Peter writes again, he says, when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Inheritance, the crown, the mansions, they are all out there, eternal. And the reason why we worship and why we come and why we have celebrated our Sundays, the reason why we do that is because we desire that which is out there. And Sunday morning, every time we gather, we are reminded that this is not what it's all about. We have hope. We have hope. In 1962, the USS Thrasher went down, a nuclear-class submarine. The Navy doesn't know exactly why it went down, but divers went down. They were tapping on the hull to see if anyone was alive. And very faintly they heard in Morse code a message that was coming back through the hull of the submarine. They listened quietly, and the message asked, is there any hope? Is there any hope? We have gathered together today to worship, and every Sunday we gather to worship because we realize there is hope. Amen. Let's stand for prayer.